posted time having arrived and a full quorum present, I'll call the Finance Committee for Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 to order. The first item of business tonight is the minutes of our previous meeting from 5/26 of 2020, a copy of which is in the packets. Any revisions or corrections to the minutes necessary? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Watson, is there a second? Second by Herbst. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. The minutes are approved. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding municipal court software acquisition. And you'll see from the packet materials, we've kind of been on a quest for some new court software for a while. And Mary Ann can walk us through that. She's got results from 3 proposers, and they're seeking permission from the committee to purchase the third of the 3, according to your packets. If you want to just walk us through that, Mary Ann?
Yeah, I think the reason we felt that we wanted to come in and present this is there is a little bit of an irregularity, I guess I'll call it, in the RFP process. So we had conducted the RFP process as we typically would. The City County IT Commission developed the RFP. It was shared with staff, reviewed, and we posted it, and I think disseminated it to companies that we knew would be interested. And then shortly before the RFPs were due, we received, or IT received, an email or a call from TIPS Software, which is short for Titan Public Safety Solutions, Inc., and they said they would not be submitting RFP. So, I think it's always in the city's best interest to get as many proposals as we can on software, and that was kind of the starting point of what the Municipal Court Commission wanted for software. And I had kind of included that in my email. It's used pretty heavily throughout Wisconsin, and it has a lot of bells and whistles that really help with the administrative tasks, because municipal court is a highly clerical process as far as managing the court calendar, communicating with the people who have citations, communicating with the DMV, communicating with the DOR, to suspend and unsuspend people's vehicle registrations or driver's license, to garnish income tax refunds. And today, our current software does not have a lot of workflow built in to the software, and so it's always a lot of manual touch every single citation to accomplish that. And this TIPS has a lot of workflow built in. So when we heard from TIPS, they said that they weren't going to be able to submit an RFP because of COVID, because of timing, and they weren't really accustomed to submitting formal proposals because of their reputation in the state of Wisconsin. Most courts just purchase directly from them without actually going through a competitive proposal. So at that time, I encouraged them to submit a proposal. I said, just put something together and submit it, because then we will be able to consider you with all the other proposals. So they submitted a proposal on time. It didn't meet all of the criteria of our request for proposal, but we always have leeway to accept or deny any proposals that come in. So from a pricing perspective, they were kind of in the middle. Tyler Technologies was at $135,500. They were out of Texas, and their Wisconsin references were Wisconsin Dells, City of Portage, City of La Crosse. Icon, which was the lowest cost at $78,500, is a software company out of Georgia, and they did not have any Wisconsin references. TIPS, their cost estimate was $83,000, and like I said, it didn't meet all of the requirements of our RFP. They're located out of Madison. Like I said, they have a very strong showing in the state of Wisconsin. The nice thing is they've got these integrations already built between the track system, which is what law enforcement officers use to issue tickets. So when the ticket is issued, there's a path for it to go right into the municipal court software. It integrates with the DMV and the Wisconsin DOR. And the other really nice thing is they use Point and Pay, which is a third-party sort of online paying platform. And that is the platform that the city of Wausau uses for our real estate taxes and our other payments. So you can see that there's a lot of benefits. So, before we would go further, we just wanted to, I guess, get finance's blessing that you're okay with us selecting tips and move forward.
Well, clearly, if a software company has a base in Wisconsin where there's experience and documented experience, I think that should resonate with us based on what we've been through with assessment software. The fact that when there's not a lot of references out there and you don't know how something is going to work with everything else downstream, we've had some serious struggles with that. Were there any of the benchmarks that they did not meet in the RFP, are any of those critical? Or was it?
No, it was more of just the quality of the RFP than it was, lots of times we have, you need to submit this, or you need to check this box on this form.
And they get 10% for completeness or whatever?
Yes, it was really about the quality of the RFP, because it was more, they had, given us cost estimates before, and it was really just more or less a cost estimate of what it would cost, but it included conversion and things like that. And like I said, IT and the municipal court system had actually had 2 demonstrations by TIPS over the years, because we've been wanting to migrate to a different system for, I think one of our IT people left in maybe 2006. Is that when Jackie left? Somewhere around there. And
It's been on CIP for like 4 cycles.
Right, and one of those
Yeah.
demonstrations took place back in 2006. So that's how long we've been kind of salivating over this software, so.
Okay. Committee members, questions for Marianne or for Jerry about the software? The recommendation in the packet is that we would authorize them to purchase from Titan Public Safety Solutions. Is there a motion to approve that purchase? Motion by Ryan, second by Herbst. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Let's see here. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action on an amendment to our agreement between the City of Wausau and Associated Trust Company, NA, and withdrawal of funds from the Wausau Cemetery Perpetual Trust Fund. The City of Wausau has operated as a flow-through for a long time for the funds through an agreement for the maintenance and the care of the Pine Grove Cemetery. And so you've got in your packets a request from them to make a principal withdrawal for some equipment that they need for the purpose of maintenance, it sounds like. Does anyone have any questions on that item? If not, is there a motion then to approve that amendment to that agreement? Motion by Martins, is there a second? Second by Watson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries as well. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action on intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services for the 2020 Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so you'll see in your packets a request from the police department that in the spirit of mutual aid, statewide, obviously, when an event of this size happens, departments from everywhere are asked to send a few people to help. And you'll see that request is in the packets as well. Does anyone have questions on? Okay. Does anybody have questions on that particular item? He is. Is he WebEx? Oh, yes, I see him. So does anyone have questions at all about this particular item? Go ahead, Deb.
I was concerned about, I understand that it does cover the salary and the travel, but are there any plans for overnight accommodations that would be necessary?
There should be zero fiscal impact. The Milwaukee Police Department is covering housing as well as meals for the officers that are down there and the wages.
Okay. All right. Additional questions at all? If not, is there a motion to approve the item? Motion by Ryan, second by Herbst. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Item number 5 is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification for the 2019 Town Line Road project. And you've got that in your packets as well. It looks like that's a line item transfer. Does anyone have questions for Eric on that item? Deb does. Eric, could you come on up? And go ahead, Deb, with your question.
Hi, Eric.
I do.
I guess I was wondering, for the railroad track intersection, isn't that something normally the Canadian National Railroad would take care of? Or is that something, if they're making some modifications?
No, typically, we're responsible for that. Sections of it sometimes is a 50-50 match, like with the signals and stuff, but really the improvements, the majority of them fall on us.
Okay. And so with that, is there a motion to approve the item to transfer to street improvements for Town Line Road and proceeds for notes, $203,000 each? Motion by Martins, is there a second? Second by Watson. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries as well. Item number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification for the Parks Department for swimming pool operations. You'll recall last week, we had a couple of meetings, Park and Rec and Public Health and Safety, talking about the logistics and the feasibility of opening Wausau's swimming pools this summer. And so in the discussion, the Park and Rec Committee, on a split recommendation, voted to open 2 of Wausau's pools. In Public Health and Safety, we asked the Parks Director if we could find her the funding, if she would prefer to open the 3 pools to spread out the people a little further and not crowd them all into the 2 facilities and then argue with neighborhoods over which one to close. And so we do believe that they, or at least we did believe last week, that they would have the staffing to be able to staff all 3 pools and thin out the crowd, so that in the event that the council tonight would vote to open those pools, I'd like us to have a discussion about where we could find that extra money, and it's just under $15,000 for operations. And Jamie, would you like to come up and walk us through that a little bit for your opening plan as far as what direction we would go if the council would order that you open tonight?
Sure, thank you very much. Yeah, if we were to open all 3 pools, we're coming up with a budget modification possibly of $14,578.50. That's roughly based on the staffing. Right now, we do feel like we do have enough to staff the 3 facilities. That does put, if we did that right now, based on our plan and the number of staff we have, we would have 2 people doing the social distancing monitoring. If we only opened 2, we would have 4 people, not every shift, but we'd have a little bit more staff to choose from to do that part of the patrol while we're open. That is, one part of that is to open for July 1st through August 9th. So we'd close early July, or early August, which is typically what we do, and then we usually have 1 pool, which is usually Kaiser, open 1 extra week. So that $14,578 is only to open the 3 pools through August 9th. If we wanted to open Kaiser for the additional week like we'd normally do, then in addition to that 14, we would add $9,000, actually we would add $8,350
Okay.
to that. So it would be roughly about $23,000.
Okay, and so within the budget, I guess that's what I'd like us to talk about as a committee between you and Mary Ann. Is there an area within the budget where we could either utilize some savings or repurpose some funds to fill that gap, assuming that the council would decide to open pools? Mary Ann, do you have thoughts on what direction we would go with a $14,600 hole.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it because of what happened at the last Parks meeting. I didn't think that we would really be pursuing this.
That's what we're short, we do all three.
Okay,
We're under budget. We are within our budget if we were to open two.
okay.
Under.
Okay.
This is what's budgeted.
And you don't have any vacancies that you would be, that takes into account like vacancies that you would have with staffing or things like that?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Portions of it, but not the whole amount.
I mean, you do have a contingency of like 30 grand or something, so you could take it out of there. I'm drawing a blank here of other vacancies within the city. You know, I'm sure we could find other vacancies within the city that were funded by the general fund that we would be able to do a transfer if that was the wishes of the committee.
Do we have anything in facilities or room tax since events are not going off this year?
No, because our room tax collections are down.
Okay.
Yeah, that probably is your best bet, is to look at vacancies and see if you could fund it out of vacancies. You know,
Okay.
for example, you know, we have 1 month, we were without the city clerk, and I think we had a part-time position that was vacant, so, you know, out of our budget, we could look at those two as partial funding. I don't think that would cover the whole thing.
Anything out of profit from 2019?
Municipal court had vacancies, because they had a half-time position that was authorized for the year, and I think that has not been filled at all during the year. Who else?
You have some savings from some seasonal staff, but those have changed now, depending upon other things that happened tonight with ball fields or with the woodchucks, so I don't have a specific accurate amount, but we are down. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm gonna take this off, this is really hot.
Anything, any room in our 2019 profit at all?
Oh, that would
'Cause we
be
did
an
have some
option if you wanted to use.
surplus from last
basically
year?
surplus from last year would be another option.
Okay, Deb, go ahead with the question while Jamie's looking.
I had sent Jamie a question this afternoon. I guess I'm a little concerned that we're potentially at each pool looking at too many children, so it may be a kind of a hard black and white looking at it, but I didn't know if, say, we looked at 50 allowed in the pool or on the deck at a time, would there be some savings because you wouldn't have to have as many lifeguards, or what other additional costs there would be?
We would,
I think 50 might be more realistic than the higher numbers, especially with the recent COVID in Portage County from a graduation, and then from the Warm Pool, which I've been going to for 3 years. The new pool, they're only allowing 10 in the whole pool, which is maximum capacity of around 250. So I just thought 50 might be more realistic as something to consider.
Where does that put you from an operations standpoint, Jamie?
as far as operating costs, it really doesn't affect that at all, because in order for us to open every area of the pool, being the slides and all the chairs, we have to have the same number of guards up, whether we have 50 or the full capacity of the pool. Because of the play structures that are put in these pools and the blind spots, the only way we could reduce staffing is if we would close down features. So that, I mean, that would be an option. Then we could possibly take out 2 guards of the rotation if we didn't have the water slides and stuff open. But really for expenses, that doesn't change. The only thing it would impact would be, we would have a higher impact, I think, than to the general levy, because our revenues would be down. What we're basing our revenues on is, you know, that third of the capacity, thinking that we could reach close to that each day, to our numbers that we've set as a maximum in order to make those revenues. So if we're eliminating it down from 100 or 125 people to 50, that's a significant reduction in revenue as well.
Well, and my understanding when we talked about it in public health and safety was whether we open 2 or open 3, or whether we open them at, capacity 50 or capacity 150. The recommendation from CDC and from the Marathon County Health Department was that we stay closed. Their recommendation was no different regardless of what the capacity was, because the capacity was over 10. Was that what I was hearing from Dale Grosskreutz? Twice. He said that to the Parks Committee as well. And so, that's why tonight the council will see it on 2 mixed recommendations, from Parks and from Public Health and Safety with the opposite results. Public Health and Safety recommended that they stay closed, Parks recommended that they open. And so that didn't make the decision any easier for the council. And public feedback, of course, in the week between has been pouring in. So we're going to have to find that balance. But I thought depending on what decision they make, at least in this committee, if we could find the funding for the 3 to spread out the attendees a little further, we could at least create a situation where Jamie's reopening plan could be implemented and that we would be ready for that on the staffing and money end, rather than having them have to come back again and figure out how to pay for it. So if we do have funding available in our 2019 budget surplus, or if we could source some of it from vacant positions that were not in operation for the entire year, to find that $14,600. How do you guys feel as a committee as far as transferring those funds to this purpose if we need to open pools? Are you guys supportive of that? I mean,
Madam Chair?
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I guess before we ask that question, one question I have is, was there any thought or consideration of increasing the admission fee to try to cover the costs of the extra staffing and cleaning that's going to be necessary to open the pools?
At this time, we have not considered that in our proposal, but I guess it is something that we could consider. It would reduce the amount. I think the discussion at the Parks and Rec Committee was whether or not we have free days, and our staff recommendation was to not have free days this year because that increases the capacity. That's going in somewhat of the opposite direction of what some of those park committee members had talked about and making it affordable to the community. But, I mean, if that's a direction, we could potentially look at
Yeah,
that.
I know in every other circumstance, in the previous term, we've talked about, free pool days and how it was important for the pools to be open and, affordable to the community. I'm just thinking in a time like this where we're looking at a fiscal crunch, that maybe if people are really, that people want the pools open, maybe they need to help support keeping, opening the pools under these more restrictive times.
I guess I'm concerned about the optics of a rate increase, especially under the circumstances where families are struggling and people are largely out of work. When people are thriving, and as a community, we're not in this type of predicament, it's hard to pass along a rate increase to young users then, let alone now. And so I think that, we intentionally, when those pools were developed, priced them slightly cheaper than other area facilities. And I think that to intentionally bring up the price with the goal of, maybe mitigating attendance or offsetting expenses, from an appearance standpoint, it would be better to decide we can't afford it than it would be to, I think, charge every kid that comes to the pool with his towel an extra $1. I mean, I feel that would really look poor, I guess, as a council, for us to make that decision in a time where we just found out, this week that we're officially in a recession again, on top of people trying to get back to work and things trying to reopen. So I just think I think it would look like poor form on the part of the council if we were to pass along a rate hike now. I mean, the money of it, the way we talked about it in public health and safety is, yes, for the 5 weeks that they would be in operation, or 5.5 weeks, we would burn through the entire pool budget that we had set up for a full 2020 season, for a shortened season, with the extra staff they have to have, plus $14,600. So that's an expense that if we want to open those pools in response to public feedback and provide that service to the community, yet against the requests of the health department, I mean, we've got that to deal with too, I think that we should find a way to address that budgetary shortfall and not put that on the back of the user. I think that would really that's not going to look good in the community at all. Mary Ann?
Just from a process standpoint, I was looking at the council agenda. So you have the two resolutions, that the one that failed or was approved by the Parks, which was to open 2 pools, which didn't require more funding. And then you have the resolution that failed at Public Health and Safety that was opening up to 3 pools. But the budget modification would require 2/3 votes, so you'll need a super majority. And it's not on the agenda, but you would be able to, I think, modify the resolutions opening the pools if they wanted to. Yeah.
So
but it
with
would
the
require
passage of
2/3
one of those resolutions, we would amend it to add the budget mod at the
That's what
same
I'm
time?
thinking you should do from a timing perspective too, since we're not meeting again in June, but then it's going to require 2/3 vote.
Right,
Okay.
right. So,
I mean, between now and 6:30, I
Right.
can have funding
ready.
solutions for it.
right.
If
It's not an amount of money that is going to, based on the fund sources we would take it from, it's not going to be a detrimental impact to operations for this budget year for us. We either get it from vacancies or we get it from surplus from last year, but, we're not going to rob anything else to provide that additional funding. But I think the smart thing for us to do, because we don't know how the council is going to go, and, public feedback has been a mixed bag. So I think it would behoove us to be ready that if the order is that they open, that we try to open them in the safest way possible. And having that crowd spread among 3 facilities is certainly less dense than funneling them all into 2 facilities. So, Mayor, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, first, I think you're right when it comes to equity. We are concerned, I know Parks Department is concerned about that, and I actually had a question for Jamie, sorry that you're going back to your seat. I think you probably know what question I'm asking. If we were not to open, do you have that number of what the savings would be? And also, if we didn't open and we had that hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings, would that just go back to our general fund for us to be able to use, or would that go back to Parks? And maybe that's a layered question.
The savings that we have budgeted right now, that would be $123,447. And where it goes, I think that's a question for Mary Ann.
I guess a couple of things can happen. If you note that savings exists in the middle of a budget year and you want to repurpose it for something else, that certainly is an option. It would have to go to the Finance Committee and Common Council to accomplish that. If it, sits as a positive budget variance at the end of the year, it would flow back to the general fund unless a department submits a request to the Finance Committee and Common Council to find another use for it in the next budget year. So that, you have some flexibility about how you want to handle that.
But the committee could decide later, let's say that the council keeps them closed, the council could, this committee could decide later to divert those funds either to other things within the park department. We could take another look at the park department's CIP list.
Right.
You could probably, for $123,000, get a couple playgrounds, couple more playgrounds for your neighborhoods, rather than, open those pools this year. So if the decision is not to open the pools, then I think I would want us to talk at one of our upcoming meetings about, what else we can do for the community with the same dollars. And, we're not to the point where, we couldn't design a playground and at least put equipment on order if that was what the council decided to do. We're getting a park or 2, but we have a backlog of parks that need attention both for ADA access and for safety of equipment. And, that could be something too that we might talk about to make a different impact, but still a positive one. What are your thoughts? Do we have, I guess, let's take some action on this to decide where we're going to go with the budget mod. Jamie, go ahead.
So I just want to clear, before you make a determination on the amount, wanted to just ask for comments on if we were to open 2 or 3 pools, and that goes forward, would we want to just open for the shortened season through the August 9th, or would we want to continue like we have in years past to have one pool, whichever pool that might be, open one more week. So essentially, there would be a pool available in Wausau till August 16th, because the difference is 14,000, about 600 for the 3 pools through August 9th, or 22,000, about 900, 8,000, or $22,853 for just that extra week of, it's typically Kaiser, but it can be any pool.
The 5-week plan is already risky from a community spread standpoint. So obviously, 1 week less is just that many fewer exposures for people coming to the pool. I mean, that's just, my feeling on what we're opening up here if we open the facilities. We likely can find, if we can find 14,000, you can probably find 21, but, where do you guys feel on a shortened season? Go ahead, Deb.
I guess I would, because we are going to be at the city council meeting shortly, looking at whether we will go ahead with the pool or not. And I think we can make this budget modification later on. I would recommend tabling it for our next meeting, and then we'll know where we want to go with the dollars.
Just for clarification, we plan to open July 1st, so,
That's before we have another meeting. though.
correct, yeah.
So
So
if,
we would have enough for, we would have enough for the majority of the season. I guess before we stay open the whole length of the season, that's where we would be short when we get to that last couple of
right,
weeks.
so we would have to, if we're, at the latest, we'd have to make that budget mod at our July council meeting, if we were going to make one.
I think that still would be okay, because the major decision is the council whether it
Is
will open or
closed.
not.
Yeah, well, and open 2 versus open 3.
Right.
That's what we have to decide as well. But if we believe we can work out the money, we should have that discussion on the council floor as well, as far as which resolution to pick. And I guess, then we won't, do you want to vote on a budget mod tonight specifically, or wait? I mean, you could vote on it and not take it to council until July.
I guess I would rather table it.
Okay.
I do think we do have money just to open it up. It's just a question of, say the funding in July and August. But there is money to start the operations if the council so desires.
Okay,
I think we'd almost should have the money, and we should have the funding source identified if we're going to open up now, because I don't want to get stuck this 14th of July and have to go through that whole rigmarole to figure out how we're going to fund the last 3 weeks of the pool. So if we're going to open up pools, and we're going to decide tonight to open 3 pools, I want to see the funding source laid out for the entire term of those 3 pools.
so is it your preference that you'd like Mary Ann to figure that out before
Yeah,
6:30?
it would be my preference,
Oh, and not table it?
and not table it.
Okay, let's first see if we have a second for a motion to table it, and then we can continue talking about what to do if we don't. Is there a second for Deb's motion to table? Second for the motion to table? There is not, so a motion to table dies for a lack of a second. If we could have Mary Ann figure out here in the next half hour what she's got in terms of funding from either vacancies or surplus. Is there a motion then to, and I guess we need to look at an amount of a budget mod, so do we want her to look at funding for 5 weeks or 6? Where are we heading on that? Do you want the extra week at Kaiser, or just 5 weeks on all of them and then close them down?
I'll make a motion for 5 weeks.
Okay. Is there a second to request funding from either vacancies or surplus to be determined here before council to fund the originally proposed season without the extra week at Kaiser, budget modification to be approximately $14,600? Is there a second? Do we have a second for Mike's motion? A second by Watson. Further discussion or questions? If not, members in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, wait, Dawn, did you have your light on? Comment? Go ahead.
I just want to make some comments.
Sure, go ahead. Throw your mic on.
Light off?
Light off, mic on.
God, it's been that kind of a day.
Go ahead, dear.
And maybe my comments right now should be held off until council meeting, but going back and looking at my notes, the Park and Rec Commission, at this point, we have not even achieved Phase 1 yet. And now we're talking about the fact that here we are almost the middle of June, and we're not even up to Phase 3. the schools are not even sure if they're going to open this year. Why in the world do we want to risk opening the pools? This is a big concern, and I just wanted to bring it up, even though this is finance. Maybe this needs to be addressed at council, but
It definitely needs to be addressed at council because, we're hearing public feedback from both sides that, and half of it mirrors what you're saying. So I think we should have that discussion at council. If the council ultimately would decide to open, though, I think it behooves us to be ready for the open.
okay.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Madam Chair, sorry, I was just reading through my notes that I was looking for earlier about the anticipated budget adjustments that we had given to Mary Ann back in early May. And that had some, it was basically the anticipation of if we didn't open the pools, if the woodchucks didn't play, if we didn't do ball diamonds. And I see on the bottom, we had a note in here, so if those things didn't happen, our expenditure savings would have been from just our seasonal staff alone, about $105,000. Now, it's likely that the woodchucks will play, and it's depending upon tonight, let's assume that we are scheduling and doing work for the youth baseball and youth softball fields and soccer. That means we'd hire some seasonal staff back. If those things happen, then we would reduce the budget savings from seasonal staff from that $105,000 down to about $56,000. Now, I do know we did have to hire 2 additional seasonals that we didn't think we were going to hire, but still, that's a very small amount of that $56,000. So I believe actually within our, now that I look at this, so sorry, you had a
So
lot
that the
of.
vacancies could come from that budget?
It's within our budget already. So it's budgeted
Okay.
for seasonal wages. It would just go to pay instead of a parks seasonal wage, it will pay now for a pool. So
For
really,
pool
I don't
operation.
think a budget modification would be needed.
Okay.
Because I have it within my budget already.
Okay.
And that would be enough for the 5 weeks and the additional week if needed.
Sure.
if
And then
that's
we
the
would just direct you to make that transfer. And
Yeah,
so,
it's really not even a transfer then, yeah.
okay. All right. So then at this point, would we even need to vote on that? If she's got the money, we don't have to. All right.
Sorry.
So then if you can withdraw the motion and the second, we will not vote on that item.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and withdraw the second? Okay. And so with that, we'll recognize that there is, and we'll notify the council that there is money in the budget to cover that third pool if they choose to open, and leave it at that. So that was the last item of business on our agenda for tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Herbst, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one's ever opposed. So we'll stand adjourned, and then common council will start in this chamber then at 6:30. Thanks, everyone.